Hey everyone, welcome to the Weird World Podcast. I'm Carrie.
I'm Dean.
It's just us tonight, Dean.
Yes, Carrie, it is.
Well, I have no idea what you're going to talk about.
You don't?
No.
Okay. I am going to talk about one of the greatest, where's Jack when we needed him, disappearances in the history of disappearances.
Why, he'd push back on the whole greatest thing.
He would, because he always does what this really is. Mm-hmm. Okay. Although maybe our listeners have not heard of it, we'll find out.
We'll be the judge of that, then.
Okay. It starts with a tall, distinguished-looking, well-dressed man.
Oh, is he handsome too? Okay.
Walking into Billy Haas's Chop House on West 45th Street, New York City, between 8th and 9th Avenues. He's with a young Broadway showgirl on one arm, and he's got a lawyer friend of his on the other side as he walks in.
This sounds old-timey.
It is a little bit old-timey. The date, in fact, was August 6th, 1930.
Oh, very old-timey.
Yes, depression or not, though, Manhattan was still, it's a place to see and be seen, and this guy was a man about town for very sure.
The Chop House was hopping?
Chop House was hopping. Chops means
steak,
meat.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, any kind of meat, I think, right? I think it's like
could be pork chops.
Right? So, lamb chops?
Perhaps.
Beef chops? I don't know. The man was the well-connected and well-known New York City judge Joseph Crater. He had been named to New York County Supreme Court just a few months before, as a matter of fact, by the New York governor, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who would soon be president of the United States. It was a plum assignment. It would make a pretty rich man like Crater even richer if he played his cards right. It's a pretty corrupt time.
Oh, okay.
Crater had a ticket to go to a Broadway show later that night. Alone, Sally Ritz, the showgirl that he was with there, was one of a string of young women that the very married judge socialized with.
How old was he, did you say?
He's 41.
Okay. Oh, so he's a young judge.
He is. But, it's 1930, so,
yeah, so that's
like there's 74.
60 today, yeah.
Yeah. The judge preferred showgirls. I don't know why I said that. I'll start over.
To his wife, or what?
He had some, he liked the action. He would miss the first half of the show, but so what? As one friend would later say, he went to the theater more for what came after the show than the actual show. Crater left the Chop House, and he bid his two companions goodbye. Then he either hailed a cab that drove up 45th Street, or the lawyer and the showgirl got into the cab and watched as Judge Crater walked east, heading presumably toward the theater. Accounts vary. After that, this pretty famous New York judge who loved to see and be seen around Manhattan was never seen again. Oh. Though I think a lot of people listening aren't going to have heard of Judge Crater or his disappearance, I'm guessing. It's really hard to exaggerate what a huge story this was. This was a just massive story, dominated the headlines for weeks, not just in New York, too. It was really only the disappearances of Amelia Earhart just a few years later. And I think Jimmy Hoffa, a few decades later, could rival the disappearance of Judge Crater for 20th century mystery disappearances, I think. And we know more about that because Amelia Earhart was so internationally famous. And there's an amazing story behind her disappearance too, from what she was doing. But Crater trust me, it's a really amazing story, as we'll hopefully find out here in a minute, because it vanishes into thin air. There's literally no trace whatsoever of what happened to him.
So is the podcast over?
Yes. I hope that's interesting. But anyway, unlike those disappearances, we can be pretty sure what happened to them. Don't you think? Jimmy Hoffa, let's be honest.
Yeah.
He was killed by monsters. Yeah. We just don't know exactly. We actually pretty much do know who they were. We just don't know what happened to his body, basically. Right. Amelia Earhart,
Same thing.
She came down over the Pacific. We just don't know, did she live for a few days on a deserted island, or did she just go,
straight into the
face
ocean.
down into the water? We don't know. But we know what happened to him. We have no freaking clue what happened to Judge Crater or why or how or ever what happened to him.
Yeah.
So
I'm assuming you're going to talk about theories.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We will. There's a few. As one of those mysteries, too, you can't just go, okay, you know what? That's probably it. There is not a theory that, okay,
Right.
that's probably it. We'll take a stab, but yeah. Think about it, though. It's a sitting judge on a top court in the media capital of the world. He's just been installed by former vice presidential candidate Franklin Roosevelt, who was already basically running for president. So
Yeah.
that was a big deal, too. And he literally disappears without a trace, without any kind of a hint. No likely suspects, no motive, none that was obvious anyway. And like I said, when I say without a trace, there's just not even a hint, not even a clue, not even, oh, he probably did X or Y. We have literally no idea. When he walked away from that chop house or got into a cab, we don't know what happened to him from that point on. It was literally the story of the first half of the 20th century for sure. So let's start with Judge Crater. Joseph Force Crater was his full name.
Force?
Very cool middle name, you have to admit.
Yeah. A little bit
You don't like it?
presumptuous on the part of his parents.
Maybe it's like a last name from the family or something, Gary. You don't know? You don't know? A little judgy.
It's a kind of a great name. I will
There
admit,
you go.
but-
Now you're singing the right. Okay. He was born in Easton, Pennsylvania in 1889 to Irish immigrants. The names, his parents were Frank and Layla Crater.
Layla?
Layla's a cool name. Maybe her name is Layla Force.
Wait, what nationality were they? Where
Irish.
Were they from? Layla does not sound...
Does
well,
not.
I guess it could be Irish. I don't know.
Sure, why not? Frank Crater owned an orchard, and he ran a produce market in Easton, Pennsylvania. Crater,
Did they grow orchids on this orchard?
doubt it, don't you think? It's unlikely. I'm going to say a lot of Christmas trees and maybe elms.
It's an
I have no
inside
idea.
joke.
It is, and it's actually pretty mean-spirited. But
Every time Dean sees an orchid Thai restaurant, he calls it orchard.
I've heard it both ways. I'm just saying. I think they're interchangeable. as
There's
words.
a lot of orchid Thai restaurants.
You're a monster. So Joseph Crater stayed in Easton to attend Lafayette College. He graduated in 1910. He then went on to Columbia University for law school. Nearing graduation, it took him a little while too. Maybe he was working through law school. He was helping a woman named Stella Wheeler navigate her divorce. He was like this, about to be graduate from law school from Columbia. Somehow he was involved in her case. A week after her divorce was finalized in the spring of 1917, they got married.
Oh, nice.
That's called mixing business with pleasure. You know what I'm saying? In the years after law school, Crater worked as a law clerk, and he also taught classes at Fordham University in New York City. So he came to New York for Columbia, stayed there to work. He did not come for money, so he had to work for a living, but he was very ambitious. He was very social. He was just an assiduous networker. He just wanted to get in front of anyone who was anyone in the legal or political worlds of New York City.
Yeah.
He was trying to generate all kinds of connections and become a player in the New York City. He wasn't picky either. So he associated with good guys, bad guys. He was kind of, a typical man on the make. When he disappears, it's just as the Depression is getting started. So he's doing this through the late teens and into the roaring 20s.
Yeah, no, he's not much of a looker, is he?
Showgirls is very popular. Showgirls, as he became, particularly, I imagine, as he became very, very wealthy. As he did. That always helps when you're an ugly dude.
It sure does.
Sadly. So his big break was clerking for Robert Wagner. Wagner was a member of the New York Supreme Court. After a few years of doing this, Crater felt, okay, I've got enough connections. This guy was a big judge. My legal connections are in place. I'm going to open up my own law firm. He did this in 1927, and it was successful immediately. He was said to be a pretty competent lawyer. But again, also he combined this with his connections, and that quickly made him a very well-paid lawyer. But usually, as you know, to be like a successful swimmer in this really pretty unsavory sea that was New York City politics and government, you have to be kind of sleazy yourself, and he was seen as sort of a vaguely shifty character.
Yeah.
He has some corrupt contacts. He also, as I presumably, again, as he got more money and opened up his law firm and became very wealthy very quickly, he started having these slew of showgirl mistresses. And he would take them out and pretty openly. I mean,
Yeah.
he would often prowl theaters looking for his next party girl. I mean, he would go alone and just like, check out the showgirls, get backstage through his connections, and hi,
Yeah.
I'm a powerful rich lawyer. Want to go?
So
Want to
he
go to a
was-
chop house?
So he was gross.
A little bit, sure. But this is New York City in the Roaring '20s. His behavior was not that unusual at all, sadly.
Yeah.
But it's still, he was a little bit extra on the sleeves. He wasn't part of the Tammany Hall. You've heard of Tammany Hall?
Yes.
I don't know how many of our listeners will have heard of Tammany Hall. That was a New York Party there was a Democratic Party group in New York City in the latter part of the 19th century, well into the 20th century, that was very, very powerful, very, very corrupt, and was, you kind of, if you were a Tammany Hall guy, you got appointments and things like that. So he's associated with those folks, but he wasn't sort of a part of that group in a technical sense.
Do you know if he was a Democrat or he must have been a Democrat, right?
Probably a Democrat, yeah. I imagine, yeah. If Roosevelt put him on the court, then I'm sure he was. He was also said to be involved in brokering judgeships. So as we'll find in a minute, you typically bought a judgeship.
Yeah.
Because again, you can make some serious cash. And after you were a judge for a while, you'd come out of that. Either you used it as a stepping stone in politics, or it really, goosed up your law practice massively.
Right.
The excesses of this era, though, were starting to wear thin in New York. This was also, as you know, the era of the progressive reformers, the late 19th, early 20th century, with just this incredibly corrupt, the robber barons in the late 19th century, and the sort of institutionalized corruption gave way, or at least gave rise to lots of reform efforts, and this was happening in New York City at the time as well. The routine corruption of New York City was starting to be better scrutinized at this point. Crater fell under this microscope, and he did so specifically when he brokered a land sale of the Liberty Hotel from the city of New York to the American Mortgage Loan Company. He made some cash. He arranged for this sale to happen. The city owned this hotel. They sold it to an insurance company. Not long later, the insurance company then sold it back to the city for a $2 million profit.
Oh my!
Very sleazy deal.
$2 million.
$2 million in 19. This is late 1920s. So sometime,
Whoa.
yeah. That's a big chunk of change.
Yeah.
Apparently, nothing illegal was involved in that, or was uncovered at least, but it did kind of fit Crater's reputation as someone who was on the radar of those who were fighting corruption. All of his hard work and his connections and his corruption finally paid off in 1930. He was already a wealthy lawyer by this point, but his ambitions were bigger. He wanted to be a political player. I think he wanted to run for office eventually. And that ambition took just a huge step forward when he was, in April 1930, named to the Supreme Court of New York by Roosevelt. Now, this, I've called it Supreme Court a couple times. It's not what you think it is, in all likelihood. A lot of sources, you'll read it. If you read about the Judge Crater story, they'll say the Supreme Court and they won't explain what it is, or they even sometimes say the state Supreme Court of New York. It's absolutely not that.
Right.
In New York State, every single county has a Supreme Court. It is the highest trial court in the county. Regular cases.
Like we have
Murders,
Superior Court.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Crater was a justice of the Supreme Court of New York County. New York County is Manhattan, basically.
Oh, okay.
So he was basically one of the judges on the top trial court for Manhattan, for New York County.
Which would be the most important.
Very
county
much
in
so.
New York.
No, but there's 62 New York counties, so 62 New York
Right.
Supreme Courts. So they're not the kind of the Supreme Court like we think a state Supreme Court. That's actually called, in New York, it's called the Court of Appeals. And that sits in Albany, and that is the single court. That is like what every other state pretty much calls the Supreme Court, and what the U.S., of course, calls the Supreme Court.
Right.
So think of him as a very powerful trial judge in an incredibly important place, but not
Right.
a state. But it's almost always reported wrongly.
Yeah.
Just FYI. So, I mean, again, still a big deal. It made him kind of semi-famous. If you're in the media when you're one of those justices.
Yeah.
Again, Robert Wagner is very famous. I think Robert Wagner ran for governor or something like that. So it can make you rich. It's a great stepping stone to politics and to bigger things, and law too. So it was a very big deal. Again, he was not strictly this Tammany Hall guy. In fact, Tammany Hall apparently had someone else, but Roosevelt didn't pick Tammany Hall. Roosevelt was a reformer, and so he picked Crater. Now, how corrupt he knew Crater was, I don't know,
yeah.
or how much attention my guess
Right.
is someone said, pick this guy, and
Right.
he did. because it was widely believed that Crater, like most everyone else, had paid for his judgeship and a lot of money. Rumor had it that he withdrew $20,000 from his bank account right before the appointment was announced.
Wow.
So it's likely it cost him $20K. Now, who he paid exactly? I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say.
New York City officials, whoever put his name forward. Again, I'm not trying to protect Roosevelt. It's very unlikely Roosevelt. This is it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Roosevelt was the governor of the whole state. He was appointing people in 62 of these courts.
Yeah.
So it's very likely someone within the party said, this is the guy, put him up, and he paid somebody in the city.
Right.
And all. He may even have paid the Tammany Hall folks. Who knows? It was more or less standard practice, but for Crater, it was totally worth it. Now that he's Judge Joseph Crater, he had barely begun to warm his seat on the New York County Supreme Court. In the summer of 1930, the investigations that would later eventually evolve into the Seabury Commission was just starting to begin. These were we got to look into corrupt politics in New York City, into the police, into politicians. The heat was just starting to be turned up at this time. Again, this is 1930. And the mayor at the time was named Jimmy Walker, and he was as sleazy and corrupt as you can imagine. He was just venal, but with a smile on his face.
Yeah.
Government more or less shut down at this time for the summer. This is before there was air conditioning, so the Supreme Court, I don't know, all New York courts, but they'd shut down for the entire summer, right? Well, not all, but isn't that weird? So the top trial court in New York City would be absent through the summer. It seems unusual now, but I think a lot of things shut down. They cut for the whole summer, so I don't know if it's June or July, whatever. Stella and Crater went to their vacation home in Belgrade Lake, Maine. It's a town in south central Maine, north of Portland. It's about 380 miles north of New York City.
Sounds lovely.
I'm sure it is. So he's lounging lakeside in Maine in late July, and Crater gets a call from the city.
Wait, do you think he was wearing one of those old-timey striped onesies?
I know for
suits?
a fact he was, because we have a picture of that, and we'll put that up on social media. I guarantee he was, and as was Stella. I actually have a picture of them sitting by a pool or something like that in those old-timey bathing suits, yes. So he was.
Should I post it next to the picture of you and me in old-timey bathing suits?
Go for it.
Do you remember?
That was for Halloween, though. This was their real life. So apparently the call was not super friendly, because after the call, according to Stella, Crater was just really tense. It bugged him. Something was going on with that phone call. But he wouldn't say who it was. She asked, well, who was it? He wouldn't say who it was. All he would say is that he had to go back to New York City and that he'd be gone for a few days to, quote, to straighten those fellows out, unquote. It's a very famous quote. So
it wasn't a showgirl.
It was not a showgirl. It was something, it was business, and it was not good business. It was not pleasant. It was something confrontational, or at least something that worried him a great deal. The next day, Crater got back to New York. He goes to their apartment at 40th Fifth Avenue in Greenwich Village. He told the maid, so I don't know if she was a live-in maid or she came there, but I guess she was there. And he said, you know what, why don't you take a few days off, go home now. Oddly, though, that night, Crater went straight to Atlantic City with one of his mistresses, again, a showgirl named Sally Lou Ritz. Her real name was Sarah Ritzy. She was like 22, 23 years old. So he gets back to New York and heads straight for Atlantic City, and apparently for fun. So how worried was he? That'll be a continuing question. It doesn't appear that he was overwhelmed with concerns at this time, but something pulled him back to New York, but it doesn't appear to just be absolutely preying on him. He seems to have felt unthreatened. Right. It was a quick trip, though, this first one to New York City, because he was back in Maine by August 1st. I'm not sure exactly what day he left, but he came back pretty quickly. I get the sense just a couple, maybe 2 or 3 days. He must not have straightened out those guys, those fellows back in the city, though, because he returned to New York City on August 3rd, just 2 days later. Jeez. This couldn't have been. I imagine he took a train, but it's still got to be a several-hour trip, I would guess. So Stella's birthday was on the 9th, and they were going to have a little bit of celebration. So he promised Stella that he'd be back by the 9th. So he left on the 3rd again. He'd be back by the 9th, not to worry. Stella would later say that, again, he seemed perfectly normal. He seemed unworried. Yeah. But she had never seen him again. That's the last time she ever saw him. Huh. So we're back in New York City, August 3rd now. Crater appears to just be going about his business for 2 or 3 days. Finally, on August 6th, so Wednesday, Crater's in his chambers at the courthouse. His law clerk, is named Joseph Mara, said that he spent about 2 hours in the morning going through his papers, and he also apparently burned several documents. I don't know if that was, crazy unusual or what, but that's what Mara would later report.
Well, they probably didn't have shredders back then.
No, they didn't. But still, destroying documents. Again, I don't know if just the act of destroying documents is weird or not. They had laboriously scissors. No, they did not. Fire. I'm surprised I don't have document burners instead of document shredders. I don't know. Throw that out there.
Burning things isn't an environmentally sound practice.
If you're shredding documents, you're probably not concerned about those kinds of things. Crater sent Mara to the bank to cash 2 checks that totaled $5,150.
It's a lot of money.
It's over $90,000 these days.
Oof.
So he says, here, take these, bring me back the cash. He also, according to one source, took another $20,000 in campaign funds, but I don't know if that's true. I read that in one source. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I don't know. Crater then presumably loaded up those documents and that cash, and we don't know what else, but when he came out of his office, he had 2 large locked briefcases, and he had Mara walk with him to help him carry those back to his apartment in Greenwich Village, which wasn't very far away. Remember, this is New York. You walk everywhere.
Or take a cab.
No, you walk. They walk. Okay. I'm not exactly sure where the courthouse is to his apartment, but they got there about noon, and Crater told Mara, hey, you know what? Take the rest of the day off. So Mara went home. Mm-hmm. No one knows what Crater got up to the rest of the afternoon. He's in his apartment now. He has these 2, whatever was in those briefcases. But in the early evening, he went to Broadway.
As you do, to find a...
No, he's going to go see a show. He bought one ticket for a comedy called Dancing Partner.
Oh, sounds good.
Sure, you've heard of it. It was playing at the Belasco Theater at 111 West 44th Street. That's in Broadway. After buying the ticket, he went to Billy Haas's Chop House. As we said, that Billy Haas's Chop House restaurant was at 332 West 45th Street. It's just off Broadway. It's about a mile from the Belasco's Theater, or so, maybe a little less than that. He must have arranged this dinner earlier in the day because there he met Sally Ritz, his mistress, and a friend of his, and also a fellow lawyer named William Klein. Those are the 2 people who were the last folks to see him. If this was a business meeting, doesn't it seem weird that he had a mistress with him, a showgirl?
I don't know. It seems like it could have been pretty standard practice back then.
Really, but if it's something really serious that he has to, quote unquote, straighten those guys out. I mean, that sounds like he's dealing with bad people, and that is it some kind of corruption or something like that. You're not going to take your mistress with you to that kind of conversation, I wouldn't think, with this other lawyer.
Did men even think women could process any information they were hearing? I'm
not sure. It just seems odd. It seemed like a social dinner to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this William Klein, I don't know much about the other lawyer there. I don't know if he was involved in this kind of stuff or not. The shady stuff, let's say. So maybe dinner is social, maybe it wasn't. I tend to think it was. But Ritz and Klein reported, again, Crater seemed totally normal all through dinner. They didn't see any overt signs that he was under undue stress.
Yeah.
So that's one of the very consistent things, or at least none that was showing. If he was under a lot of concern that, his life could be on the line, he sure didn't show it. So it doesn't seem like he was, because you think you'd see some of that, especially at a small dinner like this, or something his wife would notice.
I would say the wife maybe more so than,
I know.
a couple of people you're having dinner with.
But no one did. How about his law clerk, who works very close to them, said he seemed completely normal.
Yeah.
So the dinner wraps up around 9:30 p.m. Initially, Klein, the lawyer, told police that Crater got into a cab in front of the restaurant and headed west on 45th Street. That's the opposite way from Belasco's Theater, but as you know, 45th Street is a westbound one-way road, so the cabbie just would have taken a left at 9th Avenue and headed back east on 44th to the theater. Sorry, I'm dropping some local knowledge. Because what happened to me in Manhattan, Carrie? What happened to me in Manhattan when we were there?
I don't know.
A person asked me for directions because I'm just saying that I've been there 3
proud
times.
For some reason?
Pardon?
That's weird.
Yeah, I'm super proud of that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Whatever, it's just jealous a little bit. No one asked Carrie for directions in New York. And here's and did I know How'd it go? Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Did you?
Yes, I did. Because I know the avenues and the streets. At least I did then. Now I forgot. But anyway, so that was what Klein the lawyer said. Said that at first, Klein the lawyer said Crater got into a cab and left. Sally Ritz agreed with this version, but then later, both witnesses changed their story.
No, that's weird.
It is weird. They said, no, it was us, Ritz and Klein. We got into a cab. He walked. So Crater, according to the second version, was last seen by anyone in the world that we know of, walking presumably east on 45th toward Velasco's Theater, go to the show. The show was already like half over, but again, he didn't care. So we don't know. Either got in a cab or he walked away. Either way, that's it. If he was walking, he walked into history because he was never seen or heard from again. He would later be labeled the, quote, missingest man in New York. So I love that.
Okay.
It's not even clear if Crater got to the theater that night or not. We don't know. Someone did use his ticket, but we don't know if it was him or not.
How do they know somebody used his ticket?
Because his ticket was used. Seat, I don't know. I guess they collect the ticket stubs later on, and that ticket was redeemed. I don't know. But, who knows? Who knows if it was someone who was involved in disappearance, or if he did really go and then disappeared after the show, or if which would be great to know if it was him or not. At least get us a little bit further on the timeline, but we don't know for sure. Or for someone, he could have given it to anybody on the street. Hey, want a ticket?
You'd think if he was at the show, somebody would have seen him.
He was pretty prominent.
Yeah.
You think in hindsight, but we'll talk about this in a minute.
And if he went there all the time, ushers would know him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was a prominent guy. You would think, I tend to agree with you. I tend to think that he didn't go.
Yeah.
He either gave it away, or if someone had, was forcing him, they gave away, or maybe they used it to me. I don't know what happened here, but I tend to think he didn't go. So here's why, though, we can't be completely sure, because initially, and for what now would seem a preposterously long time for someone who was so prominent, Crater's disappearance raised no alarm bell whatsoever. No one was looking for him. It was partly because of the nature of the times, right? This is a time with no telephones and things like that, or very few telephones.
Well, he wouldn't have missed work.
Exactly. His kind of specific circumstances was the biggest part. So his house apparently had a telephone, but telephones were not common, even in homes at this time. And he had been shuttling between Maine and New York City back and forth for days now. All of his work colleagues thought he is in Maine until the session comes back in, which would be toward the end of August. Yeah. So they all think he's at Maine, and they have no reason to think they should see him in New York City. His wife, of course, thinks he's in New York City, and that when he stays a little bit past the 9th, she's probably pissy, but it couldn't have been completely unexpected. She knew he had business to take care of, so she didn't raise the alarm right away. So it's days and days. It's almost a week. It's August 12th. Before anything like an alarm is raised. And that was completely private. So on the 12th, Stella finally got a little worried. And so she called a few of his friends in New York City and just asking around, where's have you seen Joe? I don't know what they called him. I'm assuming they called him Joe. He should be back in Maine. This was the first time they found out Crater was not in Maine. Mm-hmm. So they had no idea. These friends said, oh, no, we haven't seen him, but don't worry, we'll find out. We'll start asking around, which is what they did. So it's already been a week. Who knows by that time if the ushers, at that point, ushers who may have seen him days before.
They might not remember which day.
Not remember which day. So it's tough. But the friends now on the 12th, and after the 12th anyway, start asking around kind of informally, and they quickly find out that no one's seen him. None of his circle of friends has seen Crater in days now, over a week.
Yeah.
Later on, those friends would say they didn't inform Stella of this because they didn't want her to worry. Yeah. Who knows? They may have thought, maybe he's just off partying with the showgirl or something like that. Yeah. He's in Atlantic City for the last week. No one really thought, he's missing. Something bad has happened to him. Or maybe the ones who did aren't going to say that for obvious reasons. So no one even tells Stella.
Yeah.
So as far as so for days and days, she just thinks they're looking for him. But, I shouldn't be that worried. I'm sure she was. That's where it sat for another 2 weeks.
Good Lord.
I know. It's weird, isn't it? This
Yeah.
is when it was found out, it was instantly the biggest story in the world.
Yeah.
But for a very long time, no one's even looking for this guy in any kind of a systematic way. Only then, on August 25th, when the New York County Supreme Court was supposed to come back in session and he was not shown up, that other people realized, hey, something's wrong. He's essentially disappeared at this point. They couldn't keep it quiet any longer. So at this point, friends of his hired a private investigator. I think also the court may have too. But anyway, a private investigator was hired after the 25th, and the private investigator made more professional searches for him. Nothing. Found absolutely nothing. Only on September 3rd, more than a week after court had been in session with no Judge Crater, did Crater's fellow justices decide, okay, we better actually tell the real police. And that's when they did. So it was almost a month before the police began their own legitimate investigation into the disappearance of Judge Crater.
Huh.
Yeah. At that point, immediately, Crater, or at least the lack of him, was on the front page of every paper in New York, and very, very quickly, nationally and internationally. It was a huge, huge story again. So the New York City police, as you probably know, are pretty corrupt. They certainly were back then. But at least when the New York County Supreme Court judge went missing, they were very thorough. So they sent out a dragnet. They contacted everybody he knew. They did tons and tons of interviews. They apparently looked for him very stringently all throughout New York City. They found that his safety deposit box was empty, and they did not find the 2 briefcases that Joseph Mayer told them he had brought back to his house with lots of documents and presumably also a lot of cash.
Yeah.
So those are gone. His safety deposit box has been empty.
The cash that he got, was that emptying his accounts, or
No, I don't
do they
think it's
still
emptying
have plenty of money?
I don't think it emptied his accounts.
Okay.
They didn't
That's
have a
still a lot of
ton
money.
of money, though, after that. That's a lot of money to
Yeah.
have in your savings.
Yeah.
You know, he led a fairly expensive lifestyle as well. He had this a vacation home. He had a very nice apartment. He was entertaining showgirls all the time. The official investigation, though, was pretty much not any more successful than the private investigation was, other than finding out some things that they could find out because they had search warrants, things like that.
Yeah.
They got no further than the private investigator did. They found nothing.
It'd also be so hard because it's so
It's been a
far,
month.
yeah.
Even the PI was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it was just almost 3 weeks. It was just absolutely no trace whatsoever. The trail was cold, and there'd been plenty of time for anybody who needed to cover something up to cover that thing up.
Yeah.
The lack of any trace of him from the instant he walked or took a cab away from Billy Haas's Chop House was perplexing to the police. They could find absolutely nothing. No one, it seemed, could vanish that thoroughly, least of all this very recognizable mini celebrity with his picture on the front page of every newspaper. They're baffled. It was very perplexing to the police until Judge Crater started being seen everywhere all at once by everyone. The craze of seeing Judge Crater started pretty quickly after it was announced on September 3rd.
Kind of like Elvis sightings.
Yeah, suddenly the NYPD received literally thousands of claims of people said, hey, I think I saw him, XYZ. And they rippled, by the way, throughout the country.
Yeah.
Over the next days and weeks, Crater was supposedly seen herding sheep in the Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
He was seen prospecting in California for gold, presumably. He was seen as an inmate at a mental hospital in Missouri. Wow. He was seen running a third-rate casino in Morocco. He was also seen just kind of hanging out in Havana, in Shanghai, and all places throughout the world.
I was going to say, what would be the country, like from here, we'd escape to Mexico.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Where would it be? Would it be Cuba if you're in New York?
I don't know. Other than any one country.
Yeah.
But
I mean, just easy, the easiest, quick, closest, easiest.
Canada would be they have a modern police. I don't know. I mean, yeah, probably somewhere in Latin America, you'd think.
Yeah.
As time marched on and Crater stayed missing, the sightings would spike on anniversaries, especially big anniversaries like the 10th anniversary, the 20th anniversary, suddenly there'd be a whole rash of crater sightings. So again, this was a huge, 50 years later, they still did. There was some, I won't go into the details, but in 1970s, early 70s, some wags did a Judge Crater hoax calling the police and saying, with one of their friends dressed just like he would have looked in 1930 at age 41, decades later. So it was still a big deal into the 1970s or something that was, hey, I found Judge Crater. I mean, there's like the comedians would say, oh, he pulled a crater. Like pulling a crater meant you disappeared.
Right.
It became part of the lexicon. As the search for Crater dragged on for months, some odd things started happening to the showgirls that Crater was involved with.
Oh, no.
Sally Ritz, you remember her? She was the one who was with him on that last evening. She abruptly left New York City sometime in late August or in September.
Huh.
It seemed very suspicious to the police and to the press. But later that month, later in September, she was found by the police. They tracked her down. She was back in her hometown of Youngstown, Ohio. She claimed that it was because her father had gotten sick. So she was sort of called back home.
Yeah.
But she would live until 1970. She never went back to New York City.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
June Bryce was another showgirl friend of Crater's, and he had been speaking with her on the 5th, the day before he disappeared. That, later eyewitnesses say, oh, we know he was speaking with her on the 5th. Go talk to her. So the police did. Her own lawyer claimed that June Bryce had been involved in an attempt to blackmail Crater.
Oh.
And the lawyer said that her mobster boyfriend was in on this blackmail scheme, and that guy had killed Crater. Why the lawyer is saying this, I have no idea. They had to investigate. So Bryce was scheduled to speak to the grand jury that was going to hear evidence in her case. She was involved in some other criminal case, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a day before or a few days before she was to speak to this grand jury, she disappeared.
Oh.
Like Ritz, she was eventually tracked down. But in her case, she was not tracked down until 1948, 18 years later,
Wow.
when she was found in a mental institution where she lived the rest of her life. I don't know what's going on with these things, but they are interesting.
Yeah.
Finally, there's a third one, too. Vivian Gordon. She was a top-shelf prostitute working in Manhattan. She worked for Polly Adler, who was the hugely famous madam, the top madam of New York. She had a brothel. Her clientele was rich and powerful, mobsters and politicians and people and businessmen and people like that. And apparently, Crater was a client. Mm-hmm. And in February of the following year, 1931, Vivian Gordon went to the authorities. She said that she knew a lot of stuff and she was willing to talk about it. What happened is that she had lost custody of her 16-year-old daughter due to some criminal convictions, I think for prostitution, crimes along those lines. And so she said, screw all these, I don't know who exactly, the legal establishment, I guess. She said, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you where the bodies are buried. She said, I know a lot of corrupt things.
Yeah.
I've been privy to. I will testify about them to get back at these people, which was not smart.
Yeah.
And investigations into this corruption had only gotten hotter during the period that Crater had disappeared because of his ties to New York City shenanigans. It had kind of actually risen the heat on a lot of these corrupt practices in New York City. So Gordon, she was not going to just implicate gangsters and politicians. She was also said that she had a lot of dirt on the New York City Police Department, some of the high mucky mucks on the NYPD, and she offered those up as well. 5 days after she made this offer, she was found murdered.
Oh, goodness.
As you might expect.
Yes.
Ultimately, though, her murder and this whole process would lead to a lot more heat on all these crooks. Tammany Hall was completely broken. It ceased to exist.
Oh.
Mayor Jimmy Walker was forced to resign. And a lot of this, was in part due to the disappearance of Judge Crater because, like I said, it kind of brought more attention to it. But what was this whole web of corruption? Was that what had swallowed up Judge Crater? Was he involved in that, and that's what caused his disappearance somehow? We'll get to that in a second. In October 1930, so he's been gone for a couple of months now, the New York City grand jury started its investigation into the Crater case. Again, the police had been looking for him, but the grand jury called their witnesses. They called 95 witnesses. They generated about 1,000 pages of testimony. Stella Crater She stayed in Maine, though. She would not come back to New York City to testify. I don't know why. Having found no trace of Crater, I knew I was going to call him Carter in this, but it's Crater. So the police conclusion was pretty inevitable. They had no idea where Crater was. They had no idea what had caused him to go missing. They didn't know if it was voluntary or not.
Yeah.
They didn't even know if he was dead or alive. And if it was an involuntary disappearance, they didn't know if he was involved in a crime or could he have had amnesia or some kind of fugue state or something like that. I mean, they literally had no idea, no good motives, no good, plausible theories whatsoever. They had nothing. It just looked like we have no clue. And we, looked into it very thoroughly.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, they were involved in the somehow, or the people who were, who were important to them were. I don't know. After the grand jury ended its hearings in I guess in October, later on, Stella finally would return back to their Greenwich Village apartment. I think she did so early in the next year, in 1931, because on January 20th, 1931, Stella said that she found a 2-inch thick envelope in one of their dresser drawers back of the apartment in Greenwich Village. This is 6.5 months after he disappeared. The envelope apparently was not even well hidden or even really hidden at all. It was just in the dresser drawer. And their entire apartment had been thoroughly searched by the New York PD.
I was going to ask you if it had been searched.
Back in September, they had searched his apartment. Yes, they did. So did they miss it? The envelope contained stocks and bonds, checks, and an insurance policy for $6,000. It also contained a list of people who owed Crater money with a note to keep that part, the list, on the down low because she may be able to collect on these debts. So again, he was a powerful lawyer / now judge. So he had some people who owed him, and he
So it looks like he left that for Stella.
That's exactly what it seems like to me. Yeah.
Okay.
So
well,
he's
this
leaving.
helps.
Yeah, it does. It's suggestive, yes, for sure. Some of Crater's friends said that, important documents like that, he would have kept them on his person, which I find kind of ridiculous. I mean, that's dumb. I read that a couple places, like, oh, shut up.
You'd keep him in a safe deposit box or something.
Sure,
like that.
Yeah. Then maybe they were in a safe deposit box, and that's why it was empty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why would the police leave that behind, though, if they really did see it? I wondered, did Stella actually find that in Maine and bring it back to New York and say she found it there for some reason? I don't know why she'd do that.
Yeah.
But it seems odd that the police, I mean, it could just be that they just flat missed it. They did a half-ass check when they said, oh, no, we checked under every crevice, and they really didn't, and they just missed it. It's possible.
It was in a drawer.
In a drawer, yeah. And from what I read, not even like, a false bottom or something like that.
Yeah.
If they really had emptied the drawers, they would have seen it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's confusing. But it is telling, though, because it does seem, like you said, like he was leaving.
It's a plan.
Behind, yeah. He was consciously leaving stuff behind for her.
Yeah.
So regardless, the police investigated these leads, the leads that came from the envelope, those names and such, but it went nowhere. It didn't help at all. No one had seen him on this at all, at least, again, that they're saying. In fact, nothing ever led anywhere. As we know, the Crater case went cold. It was not officially closed until 1979.
Wow.
Almost half a century after Crater had disappeared.
Huh.
A missing husband was kind of tough on Stella, though.
Yeah, I was going to ask about poor Stella.
She lost her husband, but she also lost his income, and she didn't have any income.
I was going to ask you, they don't have children?
No, they didn't have any kids, no. So not much later, she was evicted from the Fifth Avenue apartment in New York City.
Yeah.
She still had the vacation house in Maine, and she had really nowhere else to go. So she went back up to Maine, trying to kind of make ends meet as best she could. Remember, she couldn't collect. He was a missing person, so she couldn't collect on the insurance.
Right.
In 1937, so 7 years later, she figures, okay, it's a 7-year thing. He's been missing for 7 years. He's dead. So she petitioned the court for Crater to be declared dead so she can get the life insurance. At this time, she was said to be subsisting on $12 a week.
Wow.
Working as a telephone operator in Maine, presumably in that little town. Belgrave Lake, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So that would be $240 today.
Whoa.
A week. I mean, presumably she didn't have any rent. They had bought the house, but still, she was living hand to mouth for sure. Her plea was denied.
Oh my gosh.
The police said that the Crater case was still open. So, which seems pretty sleazy. I don't know if maybe the insurance company had some money changing hands. I don't know. Stella married a guy named Carl Coons in Maryland the next year, 1938. The wedding was 8 days after Kunz's first wife hanged herself.
Oh.
They had a little habit there of marrying people at weird times.
Ooh.
I don't know what's going on with that backstory, but that's a different story. The next year, though, 1939, finally the New York courts acknowledged that, Crater's dead.
Yeah.
So they paid her out $20,561, which would be about $409,000 today.
Yeah.
So finally she was okay. She separated from Kunz in 1950. She died in 1969 at the age of 70. She died still convinced, as she always had been, that her husband had been murdered on that hot August night in 1930. She thought he was killed right then and there. Although I'll save it for the end. There's an interesting story about her that makes that not that clear. And it may be that she was convinced he was dead because she needed that insurance money. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, theories. What happened to him? Given the distance of time and the absolute utter lack of any evidence, even at the time, we're never going to know what really happened to Judge Joseph Force Crater. I mean, I guess there could be like a hidden document found, behind a under a floorboard, or a skeleton found with usable DNA. Maybe something like that could happen. But
I don't.
Unlikely.
Yeah.
So Judge Crater is going to stay disappeared forever, but that's not going to stop us from guessing why. So the most obvious theory is that this was some kind of straight up mob hit. Right? That's, Crater had tons of dirt. He was involved in this whole web of corruption. He knew everything and everybody. So if, he was going back to straighten those fellows out or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's indicative of someone is calling him in Maine and saying, bad things are happening. It involves you.
Yeah.
We don't know what though. So, and he burned some documents in his law practice, and those other two briefcases were never seen again. Did he take those with him? Did the bad guys get them from him? Did he destroy those documents?
There's never any chatter about any of this or talk of this.
That's weird, isn't it?
The very weird part.
Someone would say, I offed that guy.
Uh-huh.
Well, we'll find out. Somebody sort of maybe possibly did many decades later. We'll talk about this in just a couple minutes, but it's not true.
Okay.
I'm sorry to spoil that, but it's a complete bullshit story. But at the time, you'd think they'd be like, oh yeah. No, I took care of Crater.
Yeah.
He's swimming with the fishes.
Or even if
Sleeping
it's
with
not
the
that
fishes.
guy, somebody else knows.
Yeah.
I mean, there would be more than one person that knows about it.
There's
and there would be talk, I would think.
Yeah. The other mobsters were, we know who did it.
Yeah.
But no, there's nothing. But still, he did seem to be, was it possible these documents he was collecting evidence needed to bring some bad guys down, but they got to him first? That's a theory, at least, that there was some kind of mob hit. If so, though, you're right. It was kept extraordinarily secret.
Which is hard to do.
Very hard. Yeah. Even if you hire one guy to do it, and they wouldn't have, there'd probably been more than one, because you have to get rid of a body so thoroughly. That's not easy.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the dominant theory, I guess, is that the bad guys that he was playing with did him in because they were worried about him. Presumably, he is speaking, testifying, something like that.
Yeah.
Crater was part of this nasty machine. So why him? Why would these people turn on him specifically? He was a powerful part of that. They now had a judge on the Supreme Court of New York City, so it doesn't make sense that they'd want to kill him, unless they really thought he was going to testify somehow. And why? He was not. He didn't seem like that kind of guy at all. Quite the opposite.
But also, if there was some sort of ongoing investigation and he was going to testify, or he was, again, somebody would know about that.
You would think, yeah.
He wasn't doing that all by himself.
He had just bought that judgeship months before.
Yeah.
So he was, I don't know.
He doesn't seem like he's that kind of guy either.
No, he doesn't. What do you mean?
That's going to try to bring down the bad guys.
Oh, the opposite of that. No way, not at all.
Yeah.
He was playing along with them. He was part of that thing for sure. If these investigations were getting close, why would he be seen as the weak link? Mm-hmm. Unless he was very specific about Crater, like it's you who they're going to go after, and so he's going to go straighten those guys out because they said, hey, you better shut up. And he's like, I'm going to straighten those guys out. And he specifically, that's the only thing I can think of is that it was him. They're going to get to him, and they're going to use their hold on him. Maybe something corrupt he did and threaten jail to induce him to talk like you do. And for some reason they thought he might, which is, it's not impossible.
Yeah,
it can be. So another theory is that he was being blackmailed. And one of his mistresses, as you remember, alleged this.
Right.
It was, what's her name? He did dally with the showgirls. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he got one pregnant.
Like I said earlier,
What?
that he got one of them pregnant.
He could have got one pregnant, or one of them, like you said, he talked too much in front of him, and she had the goods, and she
Yeah.
knew some things she shouldn't know, and she threatened to blackmail him to keep these things secret.
Yeah.
I don't know. But he did clean out his safe deposit box. He did collect a bunch of cash, as much as he could, apparently. So was that for him to pay up this blackmail? And
Yeah.
if that's true, was he killed? Or did he not get enough cash for them? Because if he was being blackmailed, those actions he took, like getting the money and getting the documents, would seem to be involved in that somehow.
Yeah.
So why was he dead?
Yeah. But also, same thing as with any other thing, then people would know. There would be
Yeah.
chatter,
Yeah.
you know.
So if he was being blackmailed by June Bryce, and that her story was true, that her mobster boyfriend killed him, I don't know.
yeah.
It doesn't seem to be given a lot of weight by anybody who's looked into this into this case.
Yeah. I wonder
So-
why not.
And again, you'd think that actually, if that's true, the police could have looked into it and proved it, and they would have,
Right.
and they didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Blackmail doesn't seem likely to me. If someone, like if one of his showgirls says, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something," I'm going to tell
Right.
all. He tells those people, and they kill her.
Yeah.
So that's a much easier thing than paying blackmail to her.
Yeah.
So-
And also, if it's the thing that seems most obvious to me is he disappeared himself,
Yes.
same thing.
Same thing.
There would be talk about why, or somebody would know something.
Yes. So say he's being blackmailed, and that's why he
Yeah.
left of his own recognizance. That's a big step to do.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just coming into his own. He's just becoming this powerful player that he.
That's what I mean. It would have to be
Yeah.
something really big.
Huge.
And then he
that'd be a
wouldn't be
fear
the only
involved.
person in the world that knew about it.
No. Some people even said, "Oh, he ran off with his showgirl." Same thing, though.
Yeah.
That's kind of silly. But they say, okay, well, hey, the envelope was found in the dresser drawer. Kind of like he knew he would not be back, and he wanted to make sure his wife had at least some means of support for a
Yeah.
while. This could also explain him cashing those 2 checks. That he was about to go on a run. He needed money. He's going to leave something for his wife. He's going to take the rest for himself. If he was still trying to, quote, straighten out those fellows, maybe he wouldn't have known he was returning either. So in other words, if he was going to a rendezvous with the bad guys,
Yeah.
that could also explain why he left. He could have thought, okay, they might kill me at this meeting. Same thing. I'll leave some money behind for my wife. Why he took apparently a lot of cash
ton of money.
also
Yeah,
doesn't make sense with that, but it would make sense with him leaving on his own recognizance. The problem with that story, though, that he left on his own, is that would be really, really difficult for Judge Crater specifically to do. He was very distinctive looking. He was very tall. His picture had splashed all over every newspaper in the country. He was very, very recognizable. Again, none of the supposed sightings ever panned out. If a real Judge Crater had disappeared to someplace, even off the beaten path, I just don't see that lasting for the rest of his life. He's
Yeah.
only 41.
Yeah.
So if he just lived 30 more years, he's going to live 30 more years in absolute secrecy and then die in absolute secrecy.
Yeah.
And no one's ever going to know. That
Yeah.
seems remarkable.
It is hard to believe that that's what
And he
happened.
was very
Yeah.
prominent. It's not quite like Elvis disappearing and not being found, but like, can you imagine like a U.S. Supreme Court judge disappearing and never being found? To the New York media, he was as big a deal as that.
Yeah.
So very unlikely. And his picture was just everywhere.
Yeah.
Someone's going to see him. So I don't know. The own recognizance part is just as hard to believe
Yeah.
as anything else.
I mean, the reason why that seems the most believable to me is because it seems like he was setting that up
It does.
based
yeah.
on a couple of things he did, but the actual execution of it seems hard to believe.
Yes. And I'd have to say that it would not be because it wouldn't have been voluntary. So no runoff with showgirl, something like that.
Right.
It would have been, I'm going to die if I don't leave.
Yeah.
It would have to be. So, but like you said earlier, wouldn't
Yeah.
that mean people would know? Yeah.
Yes,
You know,
yeah. I
we
find
know
that hard to believe.
These guys were going to kill him, and he disappeared.
Yeah.
And so we know he ran off. And
Yeah.
that never became part of the lore or anything like that.
Yeah. And like
So-
the whole fugue state thing. I mean, he
Yeah,
might
the
have been
fugue
under
state.
some stress, but
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it was that much. And
A fugue state couldn't happen because he's wandering
people
around
would see him,
Manhattan.
yeah.
Right? People would see
Yeah.
he'd been found in 2 days.
Yeah.
His friends would have found him
Yeah.
within a few weeks.
well, people have traveled in fugue states.
Okay, so still.
But still.
He's going to be found because
you
he's not
wouldn't get
actively
too
hiding.
far. Yeah.
He's not actively
Yes.
changing his appearance and hiding. He'd have to be, for
Yeah.
him, the fugue states makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because he was so prominent
Yes.
and within less than a month, his picture was on every paper. Some people say it was a drug deal gone wrong. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. Similarly, a similar story is that there's no evidence that Crater died at Polly Adler's brothel. So he goes there, he's having sex, he dies, right?
Yeah.
She's got all these mob friends, people like Jack Legs Diamond was a personal friend of her,
Yeah.
Mona Rothstein. So she calls her mob friends. They go and they take the body and they get thoroughly rid of it because they don't want to bring attention onto her establishment because a lot of powerful people go to her establishment.
Sure. But he dies of what? A heart attack?
Mm-hmm.
Mid-orgasm? They don't have
Not
to.
so graphic, Carrie.
They don't have to dispose of his body. Just
No.
go take it, put it on the street.
Yeah.
Go put it, I don't know.
Yeah. They very thoroughly got rid of his body,
Yeah.
if that's true. I mean, it could have. They could have dumped it in the river and it didn't wash to shore. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
Supposedly, some people said that she had written about this in her autobiography that was never published, but no one's ever found a manuscript that proves she had written about it. So,
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like a long shot. I would throw that in there as a possibility, though. Because, no, you're right. Hey, let's get rid of this body. But,
And
they're
then
being
just
a little more
everything else
thorough.
is unconnected. The
Yeah.
the money that he got, the stuff he left
Yeah,
for
that is
Stella.
weird. Yeah, it would have to be a situation where he's in the process of maybe trying to flee, but stops at a brothel to have sex and die, or he knows he might be killed and he just coincidentally dies at the brothel. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a long shot. I don't think that's what happened.
Also, he's 41. It's not likely that he
yeah.
died of
You
natural
never know.
causes
You
at
never know.
41.
So there was a recent seeming revelation about his disappearance. It came to light in 2005. In that year, a 91-year-old woman named Stella Ferrucci Good died in Queens. She left behind a letter that said, "Open this on my death." I know.
People.
In that letter, she said that her husband knew who killed Judge Crater. The letter said her dead husband had told her years before that he'd been drinking with Frank Burns, who was a cab driver in New York City at the time. The husband, his name is Robert Good. He was a New York City police officer. Robert Good knew Charlie Burns, who was also a cop, and he was the brother of Frank Burns, this cab driver.
Okay.
So I'm presuming sometime in the 1930s, Frank Burns, the cab driver, says, "Yeah, I know what happened to Crater." And he tells him the story. And the story is that, he picked up Judge Crater outside of the Chop House on that fateful night on August 6th. And that just a few blocks later, he pulls over and picks up 2 more guys. And then they drive to Coney Island, and he stops and he picks up 2 more guys. So there's now
a big cab.
5 people in this cab plus the driver. And it was those people who killed Judge Crater. He said that they buried the body beneath the boardwalk on West 8th Street that is now the site of the New York Aquarium that was built in the 1950s. Good's letter offered no motive whatsoever for this seeming random act of violence, no evidence that it actually happened.
But wait, they did this all in front of the cab driver?
Yes. So, it's unlikely. And so if they could trust this cab driver to keep his mouth shut, he's
Yeah.
blabbing about it to somebody who wasn't involved in it a few years later.
Yeah.
There's no record of any human remains being found when the aquarium was excavated and built in 1950s. One source said that the police told them 5 bodies were found at the aquarium site. But that source was Stella Ferrucci Good's granddaughter. So when this came out, the supposed letter from Stella Ferrucci Good was brought to the press by her granddaughter, who said she'd found it, opened it, and read it, right? All this comes from, and that same granddaughter says, yes, at the time, later on, the police told my family that bodies were found at the aquarium. So one of those could have been Judge Crater. There's no one's word for this except for the granddaughter.
And they covered it up.
I'm pretty sure wrote the fake letter.
Yeah.
She wouldn't show it to anyone for very long. She'd kind of let people, like, press people glance at it, but she never allowed it to be, forensically investigated or what have you.
Here's the thing. After your husband dies, why do you need to seal it up in an envelope till after you die?
I know.
You're not implicated in anything.
No,
your
you're
husband's not implicated in anything.
Yeah, no, except for keeping a big secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it made no sense whatsoever. It was complete nonsense. It's this granddaughter, I don't know her name, but his granddaughter's just trying to, 15 minutes of fame kind of thing. So, fake. The most probable case, I think, is that Crater was somehow a victim of his own corruption. He was probably going to be a target of these brewing investigations. Not only was he involved in brokering judgeships that were purchased, but he purchased his own just a few months before. So that's my guess, is that, his investigation into him was kind of going to be sort of a tip of the spear investigation that would lead to a lot of other people going down.
Did a bunch of judges go down?
No.
This?
Well, there were a lot of people. Well, remember, the mayor was forced to resign. Tammany Hall was crushed.
Yeah.
I don't know how many judges. I don't know for a fact, but I bet you some did.
But was that already brewing?
It was,
Or
but
it
the
his
idea
disappearance kind of.
his disappearance helped it along. I think brought a little more attention to it, but it was already happening, and he was, it's a decent chance he was going to be investigated, and if he's brought up in charges, I just I don't know. The machine was worried about him maybe, and that he thought he can straighten out these people, and he couldn't straighten them out.
Yeah.
Right. And the money could have been for bribing. Maybe the money was for bribing. Maybe he was going to try to bribe these investigators, get them off his back. Maybe it could also be for fleeing, like I think you think.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a possibility, but
I don't think. But I don't
any
think
theory. I just think somebody else would know about it.
I know.
So that's weird.
Yeah, it is
It's
weird.
all weird.
But so maybe he took the money, because again, the money wasn't found, most of it. Maybe he took the money to go bribe somebody, or I don't know. But somehow his cohort, the people worried about him talking, intercepted him and took him on a trip he never came back from. The envelope left behind for Stella, I think, like you think, it implies that he was fleeing consciously, or that he understood that whether it's a meeting he was going to, it might not be successful, or if he was like bribing investigators, he could have left that behind for her because he was going to be in jail, not dead.
Yeah.
So it's possible those both of those possibilities could be true. I don't know. He wanted to make sure she had some kind of means, whether he was dead or in jail. The weirdness, though, is the part about how he left behind, these are some people that you can collect from, right?
Yeah.
Because wouldn't those be other corrupt people that are going to be involved in this investigation that he's going to go down for? I don't know. It's odd that he would think she could collect money from those people. I don't know exactly who they were, so maybe not. Maybe it's just literally people he'd lent money to.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I don't know. It could even be a little bit of a fuck you to the, if it was other corrupt people who were going, he thought might be about to kill him. It's like, hey, but how does he really think his wife is going to collect money from those bad guys? So what happened to Vivian Gordon, though, is kind of illustrative. She was the one who was caught up in the same kind of corrupt web that he was and was killed before she could cooperate. It's a little bit, to me, that is suggestive.
Yeah.
But we don't know. There was, no investigation specifically into Crater and all his stuff because, of course, he was gone.
Yeah.
He was disappeared. So for over 30 years, Stella, his wife, would go to a bar in Greenwich Village that they liked. It was near their apartment, and she would order 2 cocktails. She would drink one, and she'd make a toast to her missing husband, saying, "Good luck, Joe, wherever you are." She would leave the second cocktail untouched. Huh. Which implies maybe she didn't really think he was for sure dead on that night. I mean, I think she was probably unsure herself. So,
oh yeah, I'm sure she was unsure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't think I exaggerated. There is no good theory.
Yeah,
I don't. Every theory you have has holes in it.
Yeah.
If you think we've already poked a lot of holes in the mob part. We've poked a lot of holes in the voluntary disappearance part of it. I don't know. It's not one of those things like, I think I'm pretty sure it's whatever. I have absolutely no idea what happened to him. I don't know. For some, I lean toward somehow he was killed.
Yeah.
I just don't know who and how, but I think he was probably killed because I think the voluntary disappearance would be so hard for him. He may not have realized just how notorious he'd become. But yeah, I just don't see him disappearing for
No.
the rest of his life, never being noticed. Never, and why not even come forward? He'd be famous.
Yeah.
You could write $1 million book. Were people really still going to kill you 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later?
Yeah.
If he's still alive? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
So that is the story of the disappearance of Judge Joseph Crater.
Yeah.
For one of the most famous disappearances in U.S. history, for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder. I'm just curious if people generally know that or not. Had you heard of him before?
Yes, because I've heard of him from you.
From anybody but me?
Nope.
Okay. Huh. I don't know. I think probably it's mostly not that well known. But if like I said, into the 1970s, it's still a really well known case. People generally knew about Judge Crater.
Huh.
I know. It's been another 50 years, so he's been finally forgotten. One day, people won't know who Elvis Presley was.
Well,
forbid.
no, because
Probably
we
Elvis.
still see Elvis and stuff.
Still, Amelia Earhart is still a big deal.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they're still searching for, you still have these searches for her and people claim that they find evidence, things like that. If Judge Crater, if someone did find, he was tall, like, I can't remember, a 6'2" male skeleton in some former mob hangout, I think you might see the Judge Crater theories come up to the fore again.
Yeah.
It would gin it up, and then they'd find out it wasn't him. Or they'd find out it was him, and it'd be a huge story.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thanks, Dane.
Sure, absolutely. Anytime.
Interesting.
Sure. Glad I could help.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
Thanks for listening.